And welcome back everybody to another D&B tutorial on this channel. Today I'm focusing on drums and how to make them sound even better. We have a very basic drum layout like this. And we're going to transform it into something like this. And we're going to make that complete drum sound you just heard only with this kick, snare, and hi-hat. So there's going to be some crafty sound design and there's going to be some crafty audio effects processing. Oh yeah, kick, snare, basses, and effects from new pack Equilibrium, link in the description. So first things first, to make these drums sound even better and more cohesive in the mix, let's focus on the kick. I think it goes without saying, start with good samples beforehand. These are good samples to begin with, add to the audio quality, but they just need a few tweaks to get them sounding full and ingrained in the whole mix, because they're kind of just sitting on top at the moment. We need them in the mix. First things first, I've only got one tip for the kick, and that is adjusting the fades to make it shorter if the track suits it. So let's solo this bass and kick. It's a pretty meaty kick to begin with, which is great for some kind of styles of D&B and not so much for others. So what we can do is drag this and press A for automation. Make sure computer MIDI isn't on, and we can drag this fade to adjust the kick's length and make it snappier. I reckon that's pretty good. It's a little bit tighter and it just punches through the mix quicker, leaves more room for the bass. Since we haven't sidechained it yet, we may or may not in the future, I don't know. We copy and paste this to the new drum section. So just delete that. And duplicate and replace it there. Same could be said with the snare, to be fair. If it's a little bit too boomy and you want a tighter snare sound, just load up that fade out tool and see how it sounds in the mix. Let's mute the hi-hat for the time being. Kind of like that actually. Tighter snare sound, tighter kick sound. Punch through the mix quicker for this particular style anyway. Sometimes you need a good old fat kick and snare, like in a pendulum tune. But I feel like since these basses are a lot faster pace and they're doing like 16th wobs, a tight kick and snare comes in handy. Next up on our list is what I like to call ghost snares. I think I may have covered this in a tutorial before, but it's essentially mimicking a light snare played by like a live drummer. So you go boom, something like that. And you can easily make these with your snare that's already in the mix. So new audio channel. I'm going to drag the snare down. And these ghost snares are going to be very, very snappy. So I don't want much of the transient, so I'm going to cut it into the body here. A little bit of a fade. I'm also going to shorten the sample a lot like that. So we get kind of like a personal preference on how long you want it to be. I'm going to go for that. So ghost snare compared to main snare. Placement, I would go... What's the classic one? I think this is the classic. So let's group all these drums together. That'd help. Command or Control G. Turn it down in volume a little bit. It is somehow louder than the main snare. We don't want that. Not quite sounding right. There we go. It needs to be a little bit longer. Coming through a little bit stronger now. Was just a little bit too much bass, so I'm going to go ahead and EQ out a little bit of the low end. Ghost snares just add a little bit more movement, add a bit more realism with MIDI drums. I think enough said on that. Hopefully you can hear it make a difference. So if I actually was playing the whole mix. I don't like the first one at all. Yeah, first one can go away. Almost a success. that is our kick and snare mostly dealt with. Moving on to like cymbals and breaks now to get it sounding even fuller. So hi-hat, I may have had a little bit too loud before to kind of accentuate my point. Eighths, it's just a little bit too loud. To fill out the space even more, we're going to double up these hi-hats and make them even faster. So we're going to 16ths now. So this should sound like this. But of course that's too much. It's obviously way too loud, but it's also a little bit not quite clean enough just for the background element. And since it's essentially doubling up the hi-hat, we want to make it slightly different, so I'm going to transpose it up a little bit. And maybe add a little bit of delay as well to make it wider. So we go time, turn that off. Just a little bit, this sounds... I mean, we could use that actually. Let's hear the drums now. Nice, definitely sounding a lot more fleshed out and thick. We've got some thick drums now. What I also want to do is resample and then chuck grain delay to make our breaks in the background. So I'm going to mute the kick and snare. Solo the drums, new audio channel, recording from resampling, record, and let's hear it. Sweet. If I just played this normally and chuck it in the drums channel, it is going to sound loud because it's essentially playing the same thing twice. Grain delay should also help make it wider. We want sync off time 0 or 1 millisecond, dry wet, yeah. Might use a little bit of EQ, it was way too muddy and bleh. Definitely sounding wider now. That's better. And lastly, actually no, penultimately, I've got two more things. Open hi-hat, and I might have three more things actually. What I want is an open hi-hat on every single beat, just psh, 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 but the hi-hat isn't long enough. So, I'm gonna hopefully stretch it out and it will sound decent. You want this to play up until there, but the sample isn't long enough. We can't... It's just gonna sound muddy. Warp textures. Double click here, create a new warp marker and pull it out. I don't know if this is actually gonna work. This is just an idea I had in my head. Even more. That could be a cool break sound. No, I won't complete. It does sound very grainy and gross, but hopefully with a bit of EQ we can kind of just make it like sound similar to white noise in a way. Just like super high end frequencies and just psh, kind of in the background. So that's the aim. A little bit of reverb, it's still sounding rough. Actually I'm going to reverb 100% and focus on that high end. Anyway, so hopefully this sound. Bit more background sound. Pre-delay, I don't want any delay, so I'm going to make that 0.5 milliseconds is tiny though. Now that should do. Let's hear it with the drums. Nice, coming through great. That is the sound design behind it. Now it's time to move on to the audio processing, get them all glued together and make the drums sound really cohesive. Usually at this point I'd load up Isotope Trash 2. It's one of my favorite distortion plugins. Not affiliated at all, I just really like Trash 2. And then that'll help blend it all together. But since this is an Ableton focused tutorial, I'm gonna load up Saturator, which is also brilliant. And maybe a little bit of multiband OTT right beforehand. And when I say a little bit, I mean a little bit. Yeah, 15. And we're gonna focus on bass and drive. So crank the drive until it sounds sizzling. Kicks distorted. It really brought the hi-hat and the perks up, so we're gonna have to turn them down. Unless it sounds pleasant in the mix, but otherwise, yeah, nah. I really like the first preset in the whole ballad reverb. Just a little bit of tweaking, low cut, we don't want any bass reverb coming through. Pre-delay, a little bit, decay time, we don't need 3 seconds, and we definitely don't need 100%, maybe like 20. Might not be able to hear that through like phone or laptop speakers, but you can hear it through headphones. It just adds a little bit more sizzle in space. So yeah. Drums are sounding way better now. Soft clip on. And lastly, of course, is sidechain compression to duck the volume of the bass in time with the kick and maybe the snare. I honestly don't think it needs much in this mix because it kind of just cuts through. I don't think I'd actually use sidechain compression. By the time you get onto mastering and whatnot, it's all squished together anyway. But for the purposes of this tutorial, some of the tracks probably will need it. I'm going to put sidechain in it. Load up compressor on the bass channel. Gonna do sidechain from... I'm gonna go with the group, but I'm also gonna apply EQ, make sure it's only coming through the kick. So this kind of low pass filter. A little bit of fast attack and release. So like I said before, the EQ is on and low pass is on, depending where I set this frequency. You can see the kick, the snare, just everything come through, but if we drop this back, mostly kick and a tiny bit of snare coming through, which is what I want. Okay, it's a little bit too break heavy at the moment. So I'm going to adjust the hi-hats. I feel like it needs a break there. I put a break in the original kit. I forgot how much the saturator kind of overpronounces the kick and the snare, so definitely have to turn those down. But that's sounding way more balanced. And if we pretend that that whole thing was mastered, way better. Low key, I want to try one more thing. Fuck! Okay, last top tip of the video. Try pitching your kick and snare up a few semitones, see if it sounds even better in the mix. Oh, we gotta turn the ghost snares up. Oh my god, so much saturated, it sounds so good. Damn, there we go. I mean, just pitching them up was unintentional. I wasn't actually going to plan to cover that in this video, but it ended up being one of the best tips, I reckon. Anyway, that is how to make your drums sound even better in the mix. The drum samples sounded great to begin with, but they weren't just kind of blending into the mix. And that is where you can do some sound design and a little bit of drum arrangement to get it sounding even better. Literally all of that was the same kick, snare, and hi-hat from the beginning, just getting crafty with it. Bass samples and whatnot from the new pack Equilibrium out now, link in the description is DnB pack. And yeah, like I said, to celebrate, I'll be doing a bunch of DnB tutorials over the next few weeks. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial, and peace.